Welcome to another edition of The Reaction with me, Sarah Vine, and
Andrew Pearce. Now, I made a pledge, if you remember, last week. If we get into the semi-finals of the Euros, England, that is, because Scotland are out, I didn't mind that they were out particularly, I would wear my England kit. I don't think I have to ask you to wash your son's England kit, because it doesn't look like they're going to get that much further, because they didn't even manage to score a goal against Slovenia. Now, I've done my homework, Sarah. Where do you think they are in the world rankings?
What you're asking me about Slovenia? I don't know, 297th?
Well, no, but they're in between Paraguay and Saudi Arabia. Who knew Saudi Arabia had a football team?
Well, I think Saudi Arabia just have everything because they've got so much money. They just have one of everything just in case.
I'm surprised they haven't bought the best manager in the world. But they're 57th in the world and we couldn't beat them. So my partner and I went
It could have been worse, though. They could have scored a goal against us.
I suppose.
I mean, that could have happened.
And it then would have probably meant we'd be playing Germany on Sunday. Could you bear to go through all that emotional trauma again?
Well, my son, who is my, my go-to for everything football, says Spain are doing amazingly well.
Right.
And so the good thing about this result is that we don't have to play Spain, I think.
Right.
I'm not sure.
We might have to play Romania. We might have to play Romania.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
I don't. Somebody tried to explain to me today that we need to play a better team because it will raise our game.
Right.
What warped logic that is. If we can't beat a useless team, how are we going to beat a good team?
Apparently these people, this team is made up of incredibly brilliant football players. Yes. So it just goes to show that sort of individual brilliance doesn't necessarily make a brilliant team.
It's a bit like the cabinet, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's very good cabinet ministers, but it is a useless government.
Exactly. That's the thing. That's a frame of reference that you and I can understand slightly better.
And if we were betting people, we wouldn't bet on England progressing to the last two, perhaps, of this tournament. But we probably also wouldn't be betting on the date of the general election, Sarah.
Unlike quite a lot of people.
Yeah, your husband was entitled to all sorts of privileged information over the years about election time. And now he told me he wasn't in the loop on the early election, because if he had been, I'm sure he'd have said to the Prime Minister, don't do it! But we've got 5 Tories under investigation, and the extraordinary story of the Labour candidate, Kevin Craig, who bet against himself winning his seat.
I know,
and he's been suspended.
That's quite funny, actually.
How ridiculous is he?
I think on the Tories, I think it's just the final kind of nail in the coffin.
You say that every week.
No, I know, but
it's D-Day, nail in the coffin.
Nail in the coffin.
Betting.
So many nails in this coffin.
I know.
This coffin is very firmly nailed down.
I didn't have Sky as a teenager. Another nail in the coffin.
Yeah.
And of course, Labour aren't saying anything. They're being completely risk averse. They don't need to because the polls aren't budging.
No, and also the Tories are doing all their work for them.
Yeah,
but I think on the betting thing, I think it's just ridiculous. I don't understand why. Sorry,
it really has cut through on the doorstep.
It really has cut through on the doorstep, and. I mean, I know, having been married to a minister and an MP for a very long time, that there is such a thing as a politically compromised person, which is what I always was, and still am, actually.
Yes.
So it's quite hard for me to get a credit card or to apply for a loan or anything like that, because I have to jump through a whole load of hoops to make sure that I'm not, secretly taking a bribe or something like that. So it's quite a sort of, certainly in the financial sector, they take it very seriously. And every year my bank manager rings me up and says, what's this sum of money for?
Lucky you have a bank manager.
I do
Most
have a bank
people
manager.
just get a call centre.
No, I do have a bank manager. It's very nice.
That's nice.
But I think that's because I'm politically compromised.
Yes.
So they have to sort of make the effort. But I think perhaps that should not, maybe, I mean, the thing about it is that, you just think when you see all these people trying to profiteering from the election, you think, well, then maybe that should be extended to things like betting and other things.
Yeah, and the things, because it feeds the unfair idea of politicians that they've just got their noses deep in the trough, head first into the trough, self-aggrandising, making money via privileged information. And we know that isn't the case for most of them. I mean, The Guardian said this week that they think this has got the same political implications as the Great Expenses Scandal. Absolutely ridiculous.
That was a completely different way.
Went to prison. 3 members of the House of Lords went to prison for massive deception at public expense. These are idiots, some of them, we think, who bet on a July the 4th election because they had a bit of privileged information. So it's a form of insider trading, minor amounts of money involved, but it's the principle.
No, it is completely the principle. I don't think it's the same as the expenses scandal, which affected the whole of Westminster, left and right. I think it's a reflection of the kind of calibre of people that we now have in politics that they would do something like that, to be perfectly honest.
I know.
That they would be so stupid, apart from anything else. Because if you are going to do something like that, don't do it in your name. Get your mate to do it at least, or something. I don't know. At least be clever if you're going to be...
Don't put £100 on at 5 to 1,
Exactly.
so you win £500, but in the process destroy your reputation, which has happened to Craig Williams, who was the Prime Minister's Parliamentary Private Secretary. That means he was effectively his bag carrier, not very senior, but was often with him, so would have heard all sorts of things, as do the police drivers. I mean, I know quite a few police officers are under investigation. I'm convinced they were the leak behind the Tory MPs involved, the police, because they wanted to distract from the fact that last week a police officer was suspended.
Well, I mean, those drivers...
One of British protection officers.
Those drivers and those protection officers...
They hear everything.
They hear everything. I mean, they're like the people who work for the royal family. They know absolutely everything.
They hear all the mobile phone calls in the car.
Yeah, they hear everything, and they also know where the people are going.
They know about
they know if they're dropping them off at a certain place or whatever. I don't know whether they have to. I think they probably have to sign some sort of thing. But it's very tempting, isn't it? When you're kind of...
But you do think... I mean, I hate banning things, and I don't think we should ban things, but I just thought, how many more of these morons are going to be unmasked as having a little flutter? The data manager of the Tory party, for God's sake, the campaign manager, not, again, as The Guardian said, the guy who's running the campaign, that's Isaac Levida, who we know, who's a nice guy and is not involved in any of this. But I asked... Mel Stride today, he's the Work and Pensions Secretary, Mr. Boring Dependable, who's been on TV more than almost probably as much as the Prime Minister.
Yeah, I like Mel Stride. He has a houseboat. Did you know that?
Very nice, because he might have spent quite a lot of time in it if he loses his seat. But I said, have you ever bet? He said, absolutely not. No. And why would you? Because we as because of the privileged position you've been in, married to a cabinet minister, I know as a hack who's quite plugged in politically, there were rumours swirling about July the 4th, a day or two before.
Well, I put it in my column.
You did?
About... I think about 6 weeks before that there were rumours about a July election.
Exactly.
It wasn't a date, but
you could have rushed down to the bookies. I could have, but I've always thought it would be inappropriate. However, talking about betting, I was at Royal Ascot on Saturday.
Did you go to Ascot?
I did. I wore my top hat.
Every single person seems to have gone to Ascot except for me. I've never been to Ascot.
Well, it was very nice, and I had not one winner, 2 winners and a third place, but because it's me, I only put £5 each way. So the most I won was £24.50p.
Well,
but it meant I was quids in.
That's a free glass of champagne, I suppose.
Yes, well, I was a guest of somebody actually, so that was very nice, and it was a lovely afternoon.
Yeah.
And I saw the
Did
king.
You wear a hat?
I wore a top hat.
Very good.
But I had to take it off very quickly because the rim dug into my forehead.
Oh, that's awful.
Yeah.
The things you have to put up with,
I
mean, your life, it's just awful, awful for you.
I know. But it was very nice, and I had to do a few selfies, and so I had a few winners, and that was very nice. But that's, for me, betting.
Yeah, of course it
nothing
is. Nothing
sinister, nothing...
No.
Oh,
it's not a way of making a living, betting.
Exactly.
It's just something that you do when you've had a couple of glasses on a sunny afternoon at Ascot.
I had a couple of glasses of Pimm's, actually.
Did you? I don't like Pimm's, it makes me feel sick.
Yeah, and the person I was with was putting in gin in his Pimm's, and I knew what he was doing. We weren't offered the Pimm's, the gin in the Pimm's, if you know what I mean. But it was obvious he was drinking a lot of gin because his voice was getting higher and higher, and he was getting noisier and noisier, and his wife was getting more and more embarrassed.
More and more anxious.
And she kept saying, "You're driving." I said, "I don't think he is.
I don't think you can drive after that."
But that is betting for me, once a year. Yeah. Maybe the Grand National.
Absolutely.
Maybe I might have a bet on the next Tory leader.
I do a lottery ticket.
Well, I don't do that, but I do have a monthly standing order in the Royal British Legion lottery.
Very good.
And I won £5 recently.
Very good.
And I sent it back to the Royal British Legion, obviously. But if I was a betting man, would I be betting on Kemi Badenoch to be the next leader of the Tory party?
I think you definitely would be betting on that.
She's the Equalities Minister, of course.
She's the Equalities Minister. She's had an interesting... So yesterday, David Tennant, the actor...
Doctor Who.
This is a rather shame because I quite liked him as an actor, but anyway, that's aside. Got an award at an LGBT thing. I'm surprised you weren't there.
Don't forget the queue.
I'm surprised you weren't there.
They don't invite me anymore. I've rather fallen out of favour with them.
You're not gay enough.
No, I spoke to a load of gay candidates last week and gay campaigners for the Tory party, and I was told, as a well-known gay person, to cheer everybody up. So I said, I'm going to cheer you up. I'm not going to talk about the general election. It brought the house down. It brought the house down. But he's at this event.
So he's at this event. He's got an award, which is lovely. And then he says he can't wait for a time when Kemi Badenoch is, I'm just going to get his precise words.
Did not exist.
Did not exist,
what
exactly.
A terrible thing to say.
He says, I'm looking forward to the day when Kemi Badenoch does not exist. And then I think he slightly realises that he said a boo-boo, so then he sort of tries to caveat by saying, I don't mean her any harm. But the truth is that what you've got there is a very privileged, lefty, white man basically wishing for a black woman, the only black female cabinet minister to not exist. And I just think that's just... well, it's just all kinds of things. I mean, David Tennant is a big supporter of Labour.
Yeah, certainly is.
So he thinks that he's naturally superior to everyone. Kemi Badenoch, and of course he's saying this in the context of her sort of stance on self-ID and all that kind of stuff, which is like most people's stance on self-ID, pretty moderate, pretty sensible, pretty just, the most important thing is that, yes, of course, everyone must have the right to live their life as they want to, but that doesn't mean it should be at the expense of women's rights, which is what will happen if you have self-identifying biological males in female prisons and in changing rooms. And, we've seen that group of nurses this week talking about how they hate getting changed in front of, a trans colleague who has a penis. Quite. They feel they don't really want to be...
They feel she is staring at them.
Well, and also they don't really want to be sharing a changing room with a person who has a different biological sex to them. And I don't think that's a horrible, turf thing to say. I think that's just a kind of reasonable thing to say. And so Tennant is in that sort of, he's basically getting the cheap kind of applause.
It was a cheap jibe
from the sort of trans activists, and doing it at the expense of a woman. Yeah. And this is the whole thing about the whole trans thing, is that there are times when it feels really misogynistic, where it feels like men. It's like going back to my column on middle class men.
Normally left wing.
On Sunday, so one of the things that really annoyed me about last Thursday's debate was that Keir Starmer finally came out and said that only women can have a cervix. That, obviously because he did say at one point that it was wrong to say that only women could have a cervix. Under pressure, he then came out and said that's right. But the reason he said that was because he'd had a conversation with his friend Tony Blair, and he'd realised that he'd made a mistake. So in other words, Rosie Duffield, who is a woman, a Labour MP, tells you that this is wrong and you just dismiss her. And not only do you do that, you also make her life a misery.
Yeah, and she has to have security.
And she has to have security.
Not able to do any public hustings in her campaign.
Yes, and you basically throw her out of your own party. But when a man says it to you, it's fine because a man has said it, so it must be right. So there is so much infuriating sexism in this debate on so many levels, and Keir Starmer doesn't. When he said that, I bet you he doesn't even realise how offensive that is to women.
The Labour Party should firstly have disowned it, what he said, Tennant. And David Tennant should apologise to Kemi Badenoch, who can fight her own battles, by the way. She came back very strongly, because she can fight her own battles very well.
Her response was brilliant, of course.
And she pointed out he's a privileged white bloke. But he said it on the day Bridget Phillipson, who is going to be our education secretary if the polls are right and Labour win the election comfortably, who said, in her view, a woman who is a trans woman can use women's loos. And so from that you then go to women-only spaces, changing rooms.
But so
that is the view of, and that is the next
view of the new education
secretary,
which obviously means that she's in charge of children. Now, I have to say, I was a child once at a mixed school, and there will be certain boys who, if they think they can get into the girls' changing rooms and wave their willies around to upset them, will do that, even though they're not properly trans. And they will say, I'm going to identify as a girl, and then they will do it. And they will use it as a way to... Because we all know what teenage boys are like. Yeah. And I think that, I think not even accepting that that's going... I mean, it's a fundamental denial of human nature, which is that 99% of the people who are trans and who want to use women's spaces are perfectly well-meaning and fine. there's always going to be one who will abuse that situation, like the guy, like the male-bodied rapist who ends up in a female prison and then rapes one of the girls.
But what about the fuss a few weeks ago, Sarah, when the Tory donor was rude about Diane Abbott, and he said when he sees Diane Abbott, thinks about Diane Abbott, he thought
she makes me want to hate all black women, something like that.
The outcry, quite uproar
rightly
on the Labour benches, and quite right, because it was a terrible thing to say. She's endured more abuse than any other woman in the House of Commons, than any other MP. You and I don't agree with her politically, but actually the way Keir Starmer's Labour Party tried to throw her out, the Labour Party was bullying and unpleasant.
I mean, I tweeted at the time, this is a completely unacceptable thing to say about, I don't agree with it. I don't really agree with her politics.
But if Labour condemn that, why aren't they condemning Tennant for attacking a woman for standing up for the rights of women, which the Labour Party used to do?
Yeah.
Actually, they used to be the party of empowering women.
The answer to that question is that no one is asking them to do it. This story has not been on the BBC.
No.
It's not been on the Sky. So all the lefty media are just ignoring it. And we're trying to we're trying to highlight it, but no one cares.
It was a Tory donor being rude about Angela Rayner, the deputy of the Labour Party. Did I tell you, Adam, I was pregnant when I was 16? That Angela Rayner, who wheels out that story the whole time. It would have been wall to wall on the BBC.
Absolutely. But Dawn Butler has gone.
She's a Labour candidate.
Has gone back and said she agrees with David Tennant.
Shocking.
Yeah.
A black, an MP for an inner London seat.
Yeah.
And you would think she would empathise with a woman like Kemi Badenoch, who gets a load of racist abuse.
Yeah.
Back to where we started the conversation, she would be, and I talked to Graham Brady today. He was the chairman of the 1922 committee, the big voice you hear when they announce the leadership contest results. He's done 3 in a few years. And I said, is she a serious contender to be Tory leader? And he said, very much.
Oh no, she very much is, definitely 100%.
And she'll hold her seat.
She's
got a majority of about 28,000.
The thing about Kemi, I think, is that she has a lot of the qualities that the Tory party will need after they've lost this election, which is that she's very focused, she's very clear, she speaks in sort of clear, easy to understand sentences. She knows her views, but she's also got quite a sort of solid moral backbone. I mean, she really does. She is quite Christian. She really doesn't. She doesn't suffer fools gladly. So all this kind of sleaze stuff, she'll be quite a good counter to, I think, because she would never do anything like that.
There'd have been no party gown on her watch.
No, she's almost sort of to a fault correct, if you know what I mean.
And of course we could briefly mention Reform here, because the Reform candidate who was standing against her withdrew because of their previous support for the BNP. There's been a few polls, Sarah, which suggest that maybe Reform have peaked. This is partly because of Nigel Farage's apparent belief that the reason Putin invaded Ukraine is nothing to do with us. It's our fault. Yeah. Nothing to do with the fact we know that Putin wants to recreate the old Soviet Union and it annexed Crimea back in 2014. Yes, I think was that our fault as well?
Well, he said that basically we provoked him, and I think that's just unacceptable, really, on every level. But I just wanted to go back to the row about Tennant and Kemi Badenoch, because it is something that people, our readers at least, are very, very, very incensed about. I'll read you some of the comments. Weak word button in London. Trans rights is yet another slogan without meaning what rights. They have the same human rights as we all do. What they're demanding is the right to spaces and categories not created for them, the right to legal fiction on official documents, the right to compel speech. And then City Boy Sam from Manchester says, if their human rights are infringed, then no, they shouldn't be, and they should be supported as should anyone denied their rights. If, however, it means we are the master race, then jog on.
Yes, that's a good expression.
And Thened from Largs in the United Kingdom. I don't know where that is.
Where is it?
Largs, Largs. Is that an abbreviation of something?
I've heard of it.
I don't know.
I'm sorry,
I'm showing my ignorance.
Let's write a travel piece for the man about it.
He says, I like David Tennant, but it's a very strange feeling to constantly have men telling you that you don't really understand what it means to be a woman. Yeah. Yes, hear. I don't think they register the struggles women already have, nor the things we are concerned about regarding this issue. I suppose it's easy to talk when you have no investment in the debate. And this is what I'm saying.
And that's clearly from a woman.
Yeah, but this is what I'm saying, is that going back to the Keir Starmer, Tony Blair, vagina monologues, the mind boggles, is that they just don't even know they're doing it. They don't really, it's like people talk about unconscious racism, that people are racist towards black people without even realising that they're doing it. You know, like if you go up to a black girl and say, "Oh, I love your hair," or "Can I look at your hair? Can I touch your hair?" That's for them. That is a microaggression, because that's what happens to them all the time. And it's the same for women. Is that some men just don't even realise how patronising they're being. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. And yet his deputy leader is a woman.
Yeah.
His shadow chancellor would be our first woman.
Yeah.
Would be our first woman chancellor, Exchequer. Rachel is a woman. Why don't they say anything to him? But it's probably some of these women hold the same views.
Well, I imagine so. I mean, they probably just think Kemi
Butler.
Badenoch is beyond the pale, because we all know, and Kemi has talked about this before as well. Well, also they all think that. I mean, there's a kind of again, there's this sense of entitlement on the left that if you are a black woman, you should be on their team.
That's right.
That if you're not on their team, then you're kind of somehow
we used to get that in the gay world.
Yes.
I was deeply unpopular for not being a Labour cheerleader. I
Exactly.
had such a tough time over it.
Yeah.
How could you possibly support Margaret Thatcher, Section 28? Because she was a brilliant, tough Prime Minister.
Exactly.
Actually, that's why.
And I think Kemi has talked about this. You know, this sort of sense that if you're not, you know, you're looked down upon and sort of hated even more because you're then a traitor.
Yeah.
In some way.
Yeah.
And I think the whole thing is just so unbelievably toxic. And this is what I worry about, is that whatever you say about the Conservative Party, and they may be a shambles and they may do stupid things,
They
they're not.
And they have done stupid things.
They're not toxic towards any. You know, right-wing people are, funnily enough, they're not the ones who are toxic on sort of Twitter and social media if you don't agree with them. A lot of them.
I know. Look at the abuse you and I get. And
Yeah,
it's not from
exactly.
the right.
No, it's not from the right,
left.
ever. And I also, you know, it's really weird. I mean, on the David Tennant thing, one last thing that I will shut up about it is, I mean, he could very easily have mentioned J.K. Rowling, because actually she's much more vociferous on this than Kemi. But he wouldn't dare.
Because she's
not low-hanging fruit.
On social media. She's not low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
She's got a huge... And also, of course, she was, for a long time, a Labour cheerleader. She gave £1 million to the Labour Party when Gordon Brown was Prime Minister.
Absolutely.
And he wouldn't dare take her on. Much easier to go for a woman Equalities Minister who's about to be on the backbenches. I say it again, he should apologise and he should hang his head in shame. Yes,
so this is the problem. And I think, Kemi has made this point in her tweets, which she's, in her response to this thing, which is that, this is the kind of bigotry that we're going to end up with when these people are elected. There will be no one to stop them because, if there's not a proper... This is why we need a proper opposition.
We do. Which is why we've got to encourage people. We've got to keep saying the point. If you're thinking of voting reform, you're just going to get a super Labour majority.
But also, very interestingly, I've been messaged a few times by quite a lot of people this morning, actually, because apparently a lot of women who have criticised Tennant on Twitter X or Twix or whatever we're calling it have had their accounts taken down.
By Twitter. By Elon Musk people. Yeah, that's the thought, please.
Yeah.
My Twitter account's been taken down twice in this election campaign.
Right. There you go.
It's back up, but it's very irritating. There was another big story, of course, Sarah, this week. It's very sad news. It's 10 days today since Jay Slater went missing on holiday, in his first holiday on his own, in the island of Tenerife. Mother and father are both out there. They must be beside themselves.
Yes, this is an interesting story. I mean, I wrote about this in my column today because there's a unifying thread with all of these missing person stories. We had it very sadly with Michael Mosley earlier on in this month. We had it with Nicola Bulley. We've had it also sort of, not that she's a missing person.
She disappeared in the river.
She disappeared in the river in January of last year. And we've had it also with Kate Middleton, the Princess of Wales, who, although she hasn't disappeared, has sort of disappeared from public life. There's a kind of onslaught of crazed speculation and conspiracy theories from people. And I wrote specifically about Katie Hopkins, who did a really nasty post about Jay, saying, maybe if they want to find him, they should just stand on a mountain and just shout, "Dominoes," because he's that kind of guy. And then sort of saying, he'd obviously spent all his money on Class A drugs. The thing is, what these people do is they become the protagonists in these terribly sad stories because they get lots of followers. I mean, there's a website, there's a Facebook page called Missing Jay Slater, which has got like over 500,000 followers since he went missing. So it's all about monetization and it's all about getting lots of tweets and followers. So it's commercial stuff.
Disgustingly voyeuristic.
Exactly. I mean, in the Nicola Bulley case, it was so bad that even after the coroner had ruled that it was an accidental death, her relatives, family kept getting awful trolling to the point where, they had to sort of issue a statement.
Yeah.
And it's like, these are serious. I don't know about this boy. I've never met him.
But all these people who are tweeting around it in this country, they're not in Tenerife. They're not conducting research.
No, but what they're doing is that, if you go, what they're doing is that the algorithm is pushing them, and that what will happen is they will get. So if you're on TikTok or Twitter, they will be getting lots and lots of retweets and likes and all that kind of stuff. And what that will do is that will push their profiles. They'll get more followers. They'll get money.
Appalling, isn't it?
It's just about money. They just get, and the more kind of interaction they get, and the nastier the thing, because of course nobody wants to hear you say, "Oh, poor Jay Slater, I hope he's okay." They want to hear you say, "Oh, he's obviously a lunatic," blah blah blah. Yeah. So the nastier so it's a sort of ever decreasing circle of kind of human misery.
And you have to hope as well that his parents aren't reading any of this stuff.
Her mother's made several appeals to people to stop. It doesn't help that he has been convicted of a drug-related assault on a guy in 2021, so he's obviously a bit of a lad.
But that was 3 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. Who knows?
He was a boy. Who knows?
Who knows? The thing is, he's a lad of 19, and I remember last year. There were loads of cases of young lads sort of this age getting attacked on holiday because there's a huge anti-tourist sentiment, especially in places like Tenerife, and it is kind of run by gangs. They're not very nice. These lads are young, they're naive, they think they're big men, they're not. They do stupid things.
First holiday without his mum and dad.
They end up in all kinds of predicaments that they shouldn't be in, or they get too drunk, or they take something and they don't know what they're doing, and it sort of happens a bit to my son last year. He went on holiday after the A-levels, and he got separated from. This is the first rule of going away when you're young, by the way. If anyone young is listening to this, never get separated from your friends. No. Never ever get separated. Always travel in a pack. And he went with a group of them, and about 8 or 9 of them. And they'd all gone to a club, and he'd got separated from them. So he got himself a cab home. I think he'd had a few lemonades. And the guy asked for extra money, which he didn't have, the cab driver. Yeah. And then when he said, "No, I don't have the money," he locked the doors and sort of started driving and drove him off to a different part of town.
Terrible.
And then I got this really scary phone call going, Mum, I'm being kidnapped. And it was really frightening for him and for me. For him it was, we were lucky. It was a lesson that he learned. I think he would never do anything like that again. He would never get separated from his friends. But he said afterwards that on that holiday, quite a lot of, the girls particularly were being targeted by local blokes who were, very nasty, threatening to do all kinds of stuff.
Well, you hear of modern slavery.
Yeah.
This is how these things happen.
These are not kind of. They're not straightforward places, and I think anyone who goes into them. So it's sort of a bigger story, but I just the thing that I can't stand is this awful kind of. Picking over people's misery for money, these kind of vultures.
Exactly.
Just sort of. It's not okay. It's a very
horrible.
Unpleasant human trait.
And it's been spawned by social media.
Yeah, and it's a sport for these people. They don't care about the person concerned. No. For them, it's just a chance to get another few 100,000 followers and a bit of ching ching.
I think that the mum and dad who are both out there have had a wink of sleep.
No, and he could be anywhere. He could
every parent would be the same. You'd be, even if you're getting in the way of the search, you're going to be there, aren't you? Because you want to be seen. Yeah. You want to be doing something. You can't be waiting at home, by the phone.
Absolutely.
You'd go mad.
Yes, and there's been all these sightings of him, but
Yeah, and so we wish him well, and we hope they find him.
Well, I hope they do find him. He's probably. I have to say, I was livid with my son.
Of course.
So if he is found alive, I suspect he'll
get quite a telling off from his mother.
His mother will have a few things.
And we know somebody who does lots of tellings off is Princess Anne.
Oh yes, she's the queen of tellings off.
She's a great queen of telling off. Look, we love Princess Anne. We don't know the detail of what happened to her at Gatcombe Park, but we do know. Virtually every evening, whether she's still got her high heels and tiara on and her evening gown, she wanders around and checks her horses because that's her first love. What did Prince Philip say of Princess Anne? Unless it farts and eats hay, she's not interested.
She's not interested,
That is the Princess Royal. She loves horses. She knows all about horses, so it's clear either a horse's head caught her, because a horse's head, if it hits you, it's like a sledgehammer, down she goes, or maybe... she was kicked for some reason, but she's got concussion. It's slightly worrying, isn't it, Sarah, that she's being kept in for a few days because God, we need that woman. She
Well,
is the
she's-
indomitable force
I
of the
think
royal
she's.
family.
I think of all of the Queen's children, she feels the one who sort of, in a funny way, is most like the late Queen. I mean, I
like their father too.
I think she's like her father. I think
Yeah,
she was
so
like
do
her
I.
father. She sort of looks like him. She
Yeah.
has the same gait and everything.
Yeah, and she's got that same eye and that brusque manner when it suits her.
Exactly. Yeah.
I saw her at a garden party a few weeks ago at the Palace, and it was for a veterans charity. And I was quite amazed to be told to get in the line. I said, no, she won't want that, she won't want that, she won't want that. They insisted. And she saw me. Can you imagine her face when she saw me? And I said, I know. You're thinking, what's he doing here? You don't talk to reptiles like me. She said, well, just don't. I said, but I am supporting charity. So I'm making an exception for you. That's the only reason I talked to you. I mean, I was getting
You're
a real
still a
telling off.
reptile, by the way.
Yeah, I'm still a reptile. Of course I am. But we had quite an interesting conversation, and I did say to her, are you going to keep up this extraordinary pace? Because in the first 4 months of this year, she did 30% of all the royal engagements.
Did you see her at the Trooping of the Colour?
Yeah.
She was on a really difficult horse.
She was, but
my friend who knows horses texted me and says that was very impressive because that's a very difficult horse.
She won. She was at the Olympic Games in the equestrian in Montreal in '76. She won. She was at the Burghley Horse Stars. She's won medals. She's a accomplished horsewoman, which is why it's all the more remarkable that she's been injured in this way. But we need her back because, look, we've had the Japanese state visits here. She wasn't there.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing is...
And she's meant to be going to Canada. By the way, she's going to Canada there for 2 days. It would take virtually a day to get there. 2 days there and a day... She's 73.
Yes. Well, that's what I was going to say, is that there does come a point where you have to accept that you are of a slight age.
Yeah.
And that even though, yes, you're brilliant and very good and got lots of energy and very fit and very, all of these things, you just can't do what you used to be able to do.
I know.
It's very hard. I mean, I'm going through this with my parents at the moment. I think, and I think for that person, for someone like Anne, it's very difficult, the idea that you're losing some of that virility because you don't want to accept that you're getting older and less able. And none of us do. We all want to sort of remain in aspect at our peak.
And she's also conscious that the royal family, the slimmed down monarchy, is happening before our very eyes because we've lost the Queen, we've lost the Duke of Edinburgh, Prince Andrew has been banished, but not banished far enough. We still want him to go and take that cottage on the Balmoral Estates. We never have to see him again. And Camilla and the King are getting no younger, and the King, of course, is fighting his own cancer battle.
And of course,
Princess of Wales, you've seen once,
is not around. So, but I do think that she has to remember that the most important thing is her longevity and her ability to still do these things, and that may mean that she has to make some tough decisions in terms of her own personal sort of daily life.
I was quite embarrassed because I didn't remember to call her Mum I did call her Royal Highness. It's
Ma'am, not
but
round
she then went on to the person next to me who was my partner. Of course, he remembered to bow. I didn't think of that.
Did he bow as though his head was being cut off?
No, it was a small...
You're supposed to apparently do that.
It was a quick move. But
you're supposed to do it as though your head has just been severed.
Yeah, so he did it, and he'd done it before, and but she talked to me for much longer. So
and if you're curtsying, you have to do a deep curtsy, not a bob.
Why would you mention that to me?
Well, just for future reference, Andrew.
The deepest curtsy I ever saw was Mrs. Thatcher at her 80th birthday party. The Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh, which shows this nonsense that the Queen didn't like her first woman Prime Minister. The helicopter landed in Hyde Park. The Queen and Prince Philip arrived. Mrs. Thatcher did the deepest curtsy you've ever seen.
At the age of 80,
with her knees. I didn't think she was ever going to get up again.
Yeah.
And then they arrived it was at the Mandarin Oriental Hotel. Mrs. Thatcher, the Queen was holding Mrs. Thatcher's hand. It was so lovely. And she only stayed for 2 or 3 minutes. But she was telling the world, I'm at my former Prime Minister's birthday party. She doesn't go to other big former Prime Minister's birthday parties. And she was at her funeral. And then she said, Lady Thatcher, Philip and I, we have to leave. And Mrs. Thatcher said, yes, so do I, Your Majesty. And the Queen said, actually, Lady Thatcher, it's your party.
It's your party.
I think you should stay.
You need to stay.
Yes. And then the Queen left, and then Mrs. Thatcher, who'd been told absolutely by her staff because the memory was beginning to go, delivered this amazing speech for 4 minutes without a note. Mesmerising. Because the Queen gave her a new bolt of energy.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Amazing, really.
Lovely.
How soon after did she die?
Oh, she went on for another 8 or 9 years,
Yeah.
Mrs. Thatcher.
Yeah.
I loved her. And so we'll see that her husband, Tim Lawrence, was visiting yesterday with a little bag of treats. Did you wonder what was in that cool bag? I wondered. He said some treats from home. Not alcohol, because she's teetotal. Most of them are.
Horse treats, maybe.
Yeah.
Some carrots.
Yeah. So get better, Mum, because we know you're listening.
No, I think she just needs to slow down.
Yes, she does.
Although I wouldn't want to be the person to have to tell her that.
You tell her.
You'd have to tell her that and then run very fast in the opposite direction, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
I don't know how good she's at throwing stuff.
Probably good.
Probably quite good.
Yeah. And great to see her kids have been in Syria already. Zara's been in, Mike Tyndall's been in.
Yes.
Yeah, and but now, were you there at the concert, Sarah?
Well, what, at the Taylor Swift concert are you talking about?
Yeah.
Well, because that's where all the other royals have been.
Katie Hind went, our showbiz guru.
She goes to everything.
She told me she was going to take me. She lied.
Did she?
Yeah.
Well, I don't
know.
I don't think you actually need to go to a Taylor Swift concert because there's wall-to-wall coverage online.
Yeah, but if I went to a Taylor Swift concert, I would at least know one of her songs because I don't know any of her songs.
No, you don't know any of her songs.
Not even one.
You must know one of them.
Well, tell me, what's her most famous song?
Shake It Off is probably the most. Shake It Off, Shake It Off.
Well, why don't you sing it?
No, I can't sing.
Well, how does it go? What are the words?
Because people... haters going to hate. It's something about basically people not liking her and she's just shaking it off. She'd be a good song for you, actually.
But she's a brilliant publicist, isn't she? That fantastic selfie with Prince William.
The fantastic selfie with the kids.
And the two of the kids.
So sweet.
Wasn't it lovely?
Adorable.
And that went worldwide.
And I loved...
and William dad dancing. He was good dad dancing, wasn't
it? The little girl... What's the daughter called?
Charlotte.
Charlotte, thank you. I want to say Catherine.
Princess Charlotte.
Princess Charlotte with her little flats was adorable.
She's so sweet.
Very sweet. And her little sparkly dress, which I loved.
But you do see how the royals have changed because you can't imagine Prince Charles' dad dancing like that. I mean, Prince William is a very bad dancer.
Do you remember Prince Charles? No, he did when he was younger. He did. He had a bit of a thing about Diana Ross. Do you remember?
He did.
Yeah, he had a bit of a thing about Diana Ross.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
But I did. And the 3 degrees.
And the 3 degrees. But I have to say, William's dancing was really
challenging.
Brilliantly bad. It was fabulously brilliantly bad.
Do you think it's worse than Michael Gove, your ex-husband's dancing? Because it was very bad. We've talked about this before.
Michael's dancing is enthusiastic.
Yes.
That's the sort of...
Not disciplined.
It's not disciplined, and there's no hand-eye coordination to speak
and it tends to be better if you've got 2 feet acting in coordination rather than having 2 left feet, or is it 2 right feet? We did dance to ABBA at one of your parties, and I was truly taken aback about how bad he was.
It's terrible dancing.
And I think him and Prince William need to go and get some tuition.
I think Prince William is better.
Bruno Toglioni gives lessons, or Shirley Ballas.
I do think it would be very entertaining if Michael did Strictly. I have to say.
He's out of a job after the general election.
Yep.
So I did ask him if he's going. He said, "What do you think?" I said, "Brilliant idea, Michael. He would be out week 1."
He would be out week 1, but it would be very entertaining.
Yeah,
in the process.
But your children would never speak to him again.
No, they'd love it. They'd think it was hilarious.
I don't think so. They'd
think it was hilarious.
They
keep trying to get me to do reality TV shows, and I keep saying, "Are you insane?"
We should do it together. We should take the reaction onto reality TV. Big Brother.
I know they always want me to do I'm a Celebrity.
What, in the jungle?
In the jungle, and
Well, they get a free trip to Australia.
No, I'm not eating a kangaroo penis. That's just that's red line for me.
Okay.
In my life.
Me too.
I think that. And on that note,
I don't think they're going to answer. It's a good note to end on.
It's a kangaroo penis.
Yeah.
It just remains for me to say that if you enjoy listening to us and would like to interact with us, you can email us at reaction@dailymail.co.uk, or you can leave a comment on Spotify, or you could send us a voice note on WhatsApp. The number is 07796 no, my dyslexia just kicked in there. Sorry, try again. 07796 657. I'm very bad with 5s and 7s and 3s. Right. 657 512, and start your message with the word reaction. Thank you very much for listening.
And if you disagree with Sarah by the Loft, just say so.
Why are you encouraging this?
Why not? Because we want a reaction.
Yes, of course. A reaction. Thank you.
See you next week.